Welcome to the channel. Today's story is full of surprises and real drama. Subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's dive in. My name is David Reed, and this is the unusual story of my marriage. After finishing law school at a top university, I landed a great job at a respected firm in Los Angeles. I climbed the ranks fast, becoming junior partner and then full partner quicker than anyone else. Everyone at the firm could see I was headed for big success. I started on a challenging project, and within a week, I was in charge of it. Other attorneys and paralegals took their direction from me. One of the paralegals, Nancy Carter, was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. A natural brunette with the deepest green eyes and a smile that could melt an iceberg. If that wasn't enough, she had an amazing body. We were both 28 years old when we met. I didn't have to figure out how to approach her because she pursued me. I'm tall and good-looking, but she figured I was on the partner track when we met, and she wanted that. I was just along for the ride. At the end of my first week, Lisa was talking to me and said, "This sure was a busy week. Buy me a drink?" I said, "Sure." I knew I was being pursued, but I wanted to see where this would go. Well, after 2 drinks, it went back to her place where she gave me the greatest BJ anyone has ever received. I offered to reciprocate, but she said we should save that for next time. I kissed her goodbye and said I'd see her on Monday. Monday was a tough day for Lisa. A very pretty attorney named Megan spent most of the day with me on an aspect of the case we were working on, and was sending out signals that she was interested in me. If I could see it, Lisa saw it, but there was nothing that she could do about it. I had a 6 p.m. meeting with the senior partner to let him know the status of the case. Just before I went into the meeting, I told everyone else that we were done for the day, and we would reconvene on Tuesday. I spent an hour in that meeting, and, when I returned to my office, 2 women were waiting for me. When you are an attorney and you are not sure what you should do, you do nothing. I walked into my office, sat down at my desk, and looked up at the 2 women who followed me in. No one spoke. Finally I said, "Well, I'm hungry. Would either or both of you like to join me at the pub downstairs? My treat." Lisa said yes immediately, and Megan said no and left. That was the way it went for Lisa. She had the looks and body to win every match. After dinner, she reminded me of my Friday offer, so we went back to her place. She excused herself, and then called me into her bedroom. She was on her bed, stark naked. Lisa said, "Why don't you get undressed?" That is exactly what I did. It was amazing. Lisa then said, "Wow, I didn't expect you to be that good since you were naked. Let's see how good you screw." Well, the nice thing about having a Johnny is that it is easier to satisfy women. I would have stayed with her that night, but then I would have had to go home in the morning, shower, shave, and dress for work. Lisa had a plan. She said she could bring a few things to my place, and that way we could spend the night together. Even though I knew this was her full court press, I still liked the idea. I certainly wanted to know how it would be to sleep with her, and I mean sleep. We slept together that night, and she woke me up with another great BJ. By the end of the 2nd week, we were living together. 6 months later, before I showed her the engagement ring, I showed her the prenuptial agreement. She knew she was going to have to sign one because I made it a condition of partnership in the firm. It was my suggestion to the partners that the firm had to be protected from what was going to happen to a large percentage of partners, and part of that protection was a specific section to be included in every prenup. Separate from that was a written chastity belt for each of us. If you are caught cheating, you leave with nothing. You could still screw around, but if you're caught, you lose everything. Of course, she signed. She figured she was going to marry some fat aholi to get what she wanted. Now she was going to be rich with a man who knew how to screw. She was not going to have to screw the pool boy or the tennis instructor on the sly. For her, it was no problem. She even said she would like to have 2 or 3 children. I liked that idea too. It would have been nice to know that she loved me, but I honestly didn't think she did. She certainly liked me. The sex was great. I loved being with her. She never asked for anything crazy. She would suggest vacations to places that sounded great to me. I certainly cared about her, and I hoped she would feel that way about me. 3 months later, we were married and honeymooned in Barcelona. Our first child was conceived there. I told her that if she wanted to retire and raise the kids, that was fine with me. She even suggested we name our son. When we found out in advance, Jonathan Jr., I didn't like that idea. I think a child should have their own identity, and not be saddled by their parent. Lisa had no father. Her mother, Nancy, was knocked up in high school, similar body style as Lisa, and she raised her all by herself. My dad was a jackass who divorced my mom 10 years ago, and sadly my mom died when I was in law school. So we decided Mark was a nice name, and our first child, Ethan Reed, was born with Lisa's mom with us in the delivery room. Nancy was in her mid-40s, and I asked Lisa if she wanted her mother to live with us. She was so happy when I made that suggestion, so we looked for a new home. We found a large home in the suburbs with 5 bedrooms. Fortunately, the bedroom furthest away from the master also had its own bathroom, so we gave that room to Nancy. We wasted no time in our bedroom, and our daughter, Olivia, was born 9 months after we moved in. Lisa was still interested in me sexually since, as soon as she got clearance from her doctor after Olivia was born, she was ready for sex. It was a Saturday when she literally said to her mother, "Mom, you watch the kids for a while today. I really need to have Johnny screw me. It's been weeks." Her mother turned 6 shades of red as Lisa and I went to our bedroom. I turned to her mother and said, "I am sorry, Nancy. It must be the hormones. I was just trying to be nice and make her feel better." Nancy looked at me and said, "She talks about you physically practically every day, and she's very graphic." Now I was turning red. It did not stop me from screwing Lisa. We screwed all weekend long. It actually took us a whole month before Lisa got pregnant again. I was starting to wonder if we would have a dozen children. That problem was solved after Logan was born. Lisa decided she had her 3 children and got her tubes tied. I had no problem with that. Our sex life stayed intense. Lisa worked hard to get her figure back, and with a built-in babysitter, we went out often and acted like newlyweds. I had an ideal life. I had a beautiful, sexy wife who was never a problem. Our sex life was amazing. We had 3 wonderful children who we both loved. I had started calling Nancy Mom, which she seemed to like, and the kids adored their grandma. Lisa and Nancy never fought over anything. Work was great. I was a junior partner, and was on my way to becoming very wealthy. Lisa had a group of women friends from the neighborhood that I approved of. There was not a wacko in the group. They all had successful husbands, and they all loved their lives and social status. We socialized with the group, and all the husbands were similar. They were hardworking men who loved their families. They never talked about cheating or other women. I was thrilled. Everything was great for the next 12 years. The kids grew up. I was a full partner at work, and my wife screwed my brains out every day. She loved my Johnny. I just was not sure if she loved me. She never said it. When I would tell her that I loved her, she would kiss me and then talk about something else. It bothered me, but I learned to live with it. My only problem was a client at work named Henry. He inherited his father's company and money, and he was worth about $1.8 billion. I thought he was an arrogant so-and-so, but he never suggested anything illegal, and the firm made a lot on fees from his business, so I put up with him. He had a tough business negotiation with another company. In the end, I personally saved him about $80 million on the deal, so he was very happy with me, but he despised the head of the other company. Even after the deal was done, the other man, Adams, had a trophy wife, dyed blonde hair, huge fake jugs, you know what I mean. Henry decided to take Adams' wife, Sarah, away from him. Well, Adams was not a billionaire, and Henry was. To make a long story short, she fell for Henry. The day after Henry screwed her, he sent Adams photos of him screwing his wife. When Adams received the photos, he was devastated. He called me. I told him I knew nothing about his wife or the photos. The man was extremely upset, so I offered to take him to lunch. He met me and brought the printed photos with him. I apologized to him. I thought this behavior by my client was completely uncalled for. Of course, Adams filed for divorce. She did not contest it because she thought she was trading up financially. Sexually, she was trading one for another. I called Henry to tell him I had met with Adams and how upset he was. I was hoping to appeal to Henry's humanity. Apparently, he had none. He was so happy he told me to bill him for my time and the cost of the lunch. I did. The week Sarah Adams' divorce was finalized, Henry called me for a prenuptial agreement. I had our family relations department handle it. Adams called me back to invite me to his wife's bridal shower on Friday night. I told him that was usually for women. He told me this one would be different. He was inviting many men who would pleasure the former Mrs. Adams. I was stunned, to say the least. He said when it was done, I could not speak. I told him that I would not attend and strongly advised him to cancel the event. Later that day, another client of mine called and told me he had just spoken to Henry, and I would never guess what he just invited him to. I told him I would bet him 1,000 that I could guess. He figured out that I already knew. He said Henry sent him nude photos of Sarah Adams, and he was going. Since he was a client, I advised him about sexually transmitted diseases and advised him against attending. I knew he was married and had met his wife. When I went home that night, I was visibly upset. I hugged my wife. I hugged my kids. I hugged my mother-in-law. I told everyone that I had a very disturbing day at work and that I loved them all very much. I hugged and kissed all of them, and I had tears in my eyes. After dinner, Lisa had her usual solution to things. We went to our bedroom. It took my mind off Sarah Adams, who likely would have the same fate later that week, only many times over. I found out the next Monday just how big a scumsucker Henry was. First, he sent a video of the entire event to Adams, then he dumped Sarah Adams. She had some clothes but no cash, no jewelry, nothing. She had 3 suitcases placed on the street corner, and that was that. Legally, she was not entitled to anything. They were never married. He owned or leased the jewelry. That was that. Apparently, Henry so loved what he did that he was looking for another pair of victims. He found it in the bank vice president who refused what they considered to be a risky loan. My opinion agreed with the bank. Of course, the loan was only half the equation. The bank VP, Thomas Ellis, had dumped his wife for a younger model. He married another trophy wife with huge fake jugs, but with long jet black hair and 25 years younger. Thomas Ellis was probably worth about $20 million. Henry was still worth billions, had a private jet, multiple homes around the world, Waltall servants. True to form, the day after Henry screwed Grace Ellis, Thomas Ellis received the photos showing Henry screwing his wife. Since I was still Henry's attorney, I got the call from Thomas Ellis. He was even more upset than Adams was. I asked him if he was going to divorce his wife. He said he had a prenup, and she was history. I told him what had happened to Sarah Adams. It actually made him feel better. He thanked me, and we hung up. Sure enough, a few months later, I got the call from Henry to attend Grace Ellis' orgy. I politely declined. That same other client contacted me shortly after, telling me he had gotten nude photos of Grace Ellis. He was even more interested in screwing Alice since she was in her mid-20s. The only drawback was there was going to be more men at this one. I reminded him about STDs and ended the call. The next day, the video was sent to Thomas Ellis. He didn't see it until Monday and sent me a copy on Saturday. Grace Ellis' clothing was all packed up in 3 suitcases. She was officially used merchandise. After that, Henry waited for the next pair of victims. He contacted my firm for our legal opinion on a deal he was working on. He would be sued and lose if we let the deal go through. I told him several changes were required to make it legal. He went ballistic. He informed me in no uncertain terms that either we give our legal approval to the deal, or he would pull his business. I went to the firm's managing partner, and we held an emergency meeting of the executive committee. In the end, everyone despised Henry, and we were not going to risk the reputation and viability of the firm on a moronic deal. I was given the task of delivering the bad news. I wondered if Lisa and I were being set up by Henry to be the third victims of his violation and humiliation. I called him and told him our position. He already had another law firm lined up, and they had already approved it. They must be the dumbest lawyers in town. Now I had to go home and tell Lisa. Logan was about to graduate high school and join his older siblings at my alma mater, where they had both just finished their first year. Everyone was home, but I did not think this was a family conversation. I waited until after dinner. I asked Lisa to come down to my home office, and I closed the door. I first told her the story of Sarah Adams. She was stunned when she heard how it ended for Sarah. Then I told her about Grace Ellis. Lisa wanted to know why I told her these stories. I told her Henry tried to push our firm into backing him in an illegal deal. I met with the rest of the executive committee, I am a member, and we all agreed that we would rather lose his business than our reputation. I then had to tell her that I think that Henry will attempt to do the same thing to her and me. Lisa was pale, and she said, "My head is spinning. I need to lie down. The only thing that will help is you screwing me." So I screwed Lisa's brains out. I think it actually made me feel better since I purposely decided to mention Henry's little Johnny earlier. I could not compete with Henry financially, but sexually, I was the clear winner. Add to that, we were not poor. Not only was I a senior partner at a prestigious law firm, I was also the clear favorite to become managing director in a few years. Still, the next day, I was concerned again. We were attending a charity event Friday night, and I went home for my tuxedo and to drive Lisa and me to the venue. When I saw Lisa in her black and silver evening gown, I got excited. I was starting to worry. Would Henry be at the event, and was my wife going to advertise herself to this billionaire? When we left the house, both of our sons whistled at their mom. Olivia had a comment that cut into me when she said, "Who are you trying to impress, Mom?" I was worried. In the car, I reminded Lisa of the stories I told her about Sarah Adams and Grace Ellis. She laughed and told me not to worry. She said, "I saw how excited you were when you saw me in this dress. And looking for more love when we get home tonight." I relaxed again. When we got to the event, Henry was standing near the entrance. I tried to avoid him, but he came right up to me and said, "John, it's good to see you. No hard feelings about my change in firms, I hope. Who is this absolutely beautiful woman you have with you?" I was not going to answer, but Lisa said, "I'm his wife, Lisa Clark." He continued with the, "Oh, that cannot be right. You are much more valuable than Clark." I interrupted the crap and dragged Lisa away with me. She was upset that I dragged her away. We heard Henry call out, "Save me a dance, Lisa." Lisa was about to yell at me when I said to her, "Lisa, he is going after you. If you go with him, you will end up like the other two victims. Are you going to throw away your family for that?" She was mad and said, "I'm getting a drink." Henry saw her walk over to the bar and followed her there. I could not hear what they were saying, but she was smiling and touching his arm. I was sure I had lost her. What was I going to tell the children? I just watched them talking to each other. He would whisper in her ear and touch her. I decided to walk over. At this point, I had nothing to lose. I looked at Lisa and said, "Having fun, dear?" She answered. Henry's first name was telling me some very amusing stories. I replied, "Lucky you. He only told me disgusting perv stories." Lisa looked at me and said, "Why don't you get a drink? Henry and I are going to dance." I followed them to the dance floor and watched him put both of his hands on my wife's butt. I was going to stop her, but she was more into it and whispered in his ear. I could only make out the last two words she said to him, "Screw me." I went over, tapped, and saw the crying disaster in the living room. I asked what happened. I suggested Olivia calling your mother might not be a good idea. She is not going to say anything you want to hear. You are not going to convince her of anything. She is hoping to marry a 60-year-old billionaire and hopes that she outlives him. Your mom is 46. Maybe she plans on poisoning him. It'll give her a chance. She and I will be divorced in a few months. If he marries her, she's set for life. If not, there are a couple of gallons of misery in her future and probably a few STDs. Olivia asked, "So it doesn't bother you anymore, Daddy?" I answered honestly, "I think it will bother me until the day I die. However, I have 4 other people to take care of, and they are all more important than I am. So it's time for us to go to IHOP. We are going there for 2 reasons. 1, I want pancakes. And 2, I seriously doubt we will see any billionaires there. Let's go." At IHOP, after we ate, Noah had a question. "Dad, I don't want to pry, but I am curious about something. I understand if you would rather not answer. How much are you worth?" I answered, "Let me think. My partnership in the law firm, plus the value of the house, retirement funds, investments, and cash on hand come to about 30 million, maybe more." Noah said, "So you do not have to work anymore?" I answered, "No, I don't have to work, but this year I expect to earn over 4.5 million. I am the favorite to be the next managing director. In the next 10 years, I will make another 65 million. When each of you graduates, you will have 0 debt, and whatever you choose to do, you will be set up for success. With that, I left a 25 tip, and we went home. I told the kids that I was taking this week off and more if I needed to. A while later, Olivia's phone rang. She looked at it and said, "It's Mom." "What should I do?" I said, "Answer it and say hello." Olivia said, "Hi, Mom." "What do you want?" "What's that? Andrew told you that he didn't mean to send those pictures to Dad? Who the hell was he sending pictures of you screwing?" "I cannot believe how stupid you are." I interrupted Olivia, saying, "Sweetheart, I don't want you getting upset. Your mother is going to keep saying crazy stupid stuff. It's the only way to justify her actions." Olivia, back on the phone, said, "Yeah, Daddy got me to calm down. At least he cares about us. You sold all of us out for a tiny Johnny and money that you were never going to get." "What's that? Are you crazy?" "I am not going to say that to Daddy. Hold on, let me think about it." Olivia says to me, "Dad, Mom wants me to say this. I think she is out of her mind, but I guess that's your decision. She says she wants to come and see us on Monday, and when she's here..." Olivia paused and said, "I am sorry, Daddy. She says she wants to have sex with you." I said, "Please give me the phone." "Jessica, listen carefully, since I am not going to repeat this. As long as they want to see you, you will never be forbidden from seeing your children here. I was going to change the locks, but you left your keys here, so that will not be necessary. If you want your clothes, you can take them with you on Monday. I will not be here Monday morning since I will be filing the divorce papers. I expect to be home by noon. If you are here, you will be served with the divorce papers. In your mind, I am doing you a favor. You cannot marry Andrew if you are still married to me. I honestly wish you luck with that." "What's that?" "You are doing me a favor by not asking for half my net worth? Jessica, you signed a prenuptial agreement. Once you screw Andrew, you lost all rights to anything that used to be ours. Now, as for you and I having sex, that ship has sailed. You and I will never have sex again. Either get used to that little Johnny, get yourself someone on the side, or do without. Whatever you do, I no longer care. That is your problem." "What's that? You want the children to live with you?" "Well, that is out of my control. The children are all over 18. They can live wherever they want. If by some chance you can convince Andrew to let them live in his house, you can ask them yourself." "What about your mother?" "I told her last night that she is an important part of this family, and I made a lifetime commitment to her. It's different from the one you made to me. Mine means something. Same thing applies to Nancy as it does to the kids. If you can convince Andrew to let her live in his house, then you can ask her." "No, it's different. You are living in his house. We are living in the Clark family house. Goodbye, Jessica. Perhaps I will see you on Monday." "Hey race, Olivia." Olivia said to her mother, "Well, I'll bet you're really happy with Daddy's answer. By the way, don't waste your time trying to convince Dad to have us live with you. None of us are leaving Daddy." "Oh, you want to hear it from each of them? Wait, I will put you on speaker. Yes or no, do any of you want to live with this dumb witch?" "Yes, Mom." They all said no. "But I'll tell you what, if you can convince Needle Tool to let us live there, have him call us and tell us that, and we will reconsider. I won't hold my breath. So long, loser." Olivia hung up the phone. We had a decent Saturday and Sunday. When I left for the office Monday morning, the kids asked if they had to let their mom in if she showed up. I told them I should be back by noon, so they could tell her to come back then. You can always tell her she should have called first. I told them if they were worried, they should call the police and then me. I had already taken care of removing Jessica from all the financial matters. I left $450 in our old bank account. Everything else was unavailable to her. Bill, our managing director, had contacted our family law people, and they were ready for me as soon as I came in. I had the papers filed in no time flat. I told them to bill me directly. They said that Bill had told them anything I needed was no charge. I thanked them and left. I got home around 11:15 a.m. Jessica was sitting inside Andrew's limo. She came out to greet me and approached me to hug me. I stiff-armed her, and she stopped dead in her tracks. I said, "Let me tell the kids I am home, and then they'll let you in." I came in and asked the kids if anyone wanted to serve their mom the divorce papers. Nancy said she would do it. "What does she have to do?" I told Nancy to give her this envelope and say, Jessica Clark, you have been served, and then I will take your picture, and you will sign a form saying what you did." I opened the door and let Jessica in. The kids stood as far away as they could. Nancy walked up to her, gave her the papers, and said the phrase. I captured it, and we were done. Right after that, Nancy slapped Jessica in the face and said, "I am ashamed to be your mother." The kids stayed away from her. Jessica looked at me and said, "Well, how about you and I go lie down for a while?" I looked at Jessica and said, "There are suitcases on the bed for your clothes. Take your things and get out of my sight." I stood in the doorway watching her pack. She looked for her jewelry. I told her, "I decided to let Olivia and Nancy have your jewelry. I would mail you anything they do not want." Jessica said it was her jewelry. I replied that, based on the prenuptial agreement, when she screwed Andrew, she lost the jewelry. I told her if she needed money, she could always sell her engagement ring, which she was not wearing. She told me she did not need money since Andrew was so rich. I told her to have him replace any favorite items. She said that I had given her those items. I told her it couldn't be sentimental value since she never cared anything for me. She was mad now, saying, "How can you say that?" I replied, "Because, my dear, in almost 10 years, you never once told me that you loved me." She looked down and continued packing. She finished quickly, and I carried her suitcases to the front door. I looked at Jessica and said, "I am not throwing you out. If you want to talk to your children, you can spend as much time as you need." The kids turned their backs to her. She looked at me and had tears in her eyes. I could not resist. I said, "Now you know what it's like to have your heart broken." She had the limo driver get her suitcases, and she was gone. I looked at the family and said, "Anybody want a beer?" We all had one. The boys wanted another. I told them after lunch. So we made sandwiches, and everybody had a second beer. As I sat there, I remembered about the jewelry. I brought out a large box of Jessica's jewelry for Nancy and Olivia to go through. They each saw some things that they liked. Noah asked, "So what are you going to do, Dad?" I said, "About what?" Noah said, "Women dating." "You're still young, Pop." I replied, "I tell you what, son. Why don't you and Logan do the dating when it comes to women?" I looked at Olivia and said, "I am sorry, sweetheart. You can also date if you want." Olivia replied, "I might as well. I am never going to find a man as good as you were, Dad." I answered, "Nonsense. You are all young. You will find many people in life, and you will pick the right one for yourself." Olivia said, "You didn't, Daddy?" I replied, "Actually, I did pick the right person. If it wasn't for Andrew going after Mom, we'd still be married." Olivia said, "But she didn't love you, Daddy." I said, "Maybe she just needed more time. I don't know. Until Friday night, I did not have one unhappy day with your mother. Listen, all of you, if she calls you, you should talk to her. She is your mother, kids, and your daughter, Nancy. Nobody is perfect. Even if they end up married, Jessica will still need her family." Olivia asked, "What about you, Daddy?" I said, "Jessica and I are no longer family. We had a nice summer." Jessica spoke to the kids occasionally. She never mentioned them living with her. In September, the kids went back to college. Logan had his first year. Noah and Olivia started their second. Nancy and I drove them back, and I got them a small car to share at school. We said our goodbyes, and I felt awful. Nancy noticed, and she said she was worried about me. I said that I would not lie to her. I did not know how I was going to go on without the kids around. We stopped for dinner on the drive home. We had a nice dinner and a very pleasant conversation. When we got back to the car, I said I was grateful that she was with me, and I broke down and cried. It took 15 minutes before I felt I could safely drive. I apologized to Nancy. She said that I never needed to apologize to her about anything. We got home late, and Nancy said to me, "How about a little scotch?" I asked her, "When did you become a scotch drinker?" Nancy said, "I think we both need it." I replied, "I am sorry, Nancy. Did I upset you?" Nancy answered, "The only thing that upsets me is seeing you in pain." I said, "I love you, Mom." Nancy answered, "I love you too, son." So we each had a scotch. Then we had another. Then it hit me. I told her, if I didn't go to bed, I would fall asleep at the dining room table where we were drinking. We each went to our rooms. When I spoke to the kids on the phone, they could tell I was sounding better. I told them that Grandma was a big help to me. I was notified by the court that my divorce would be finalized on the Monday before Easter. I was working on a major legal case that was going to be the highlight of my career, but this week took my focus. I called my client, who had attended the 2 prior sex fests, on that Monday and asked if he got the invitation to my ex-wife's event. He was hesitant to speak, so I knew he had. I told him it was okay, and I did not mind. In fact, I convinced him to forward me the invitation. The kids came home on Tuesday, and I asked everyone to sit as I had something important to discuss. When everybody settled down, I continued. I said, I have some news, and please do not interrupt. My divorce was finalized yesterday. Quiet, please. I have a client who attended the orgies of the 2 previous women that Henry humiliated. I convinced him to send me the email invitation he received to your mother's event this Friday night. Henry calls it a bridal shower. I've printed it out, including the attached photos which Henry sends out to convince men to show up. Here, see for yourselves. Everyone looked at the email and the photos and said, is she crazy? She posed for these photos? I said, I doubt she posed for the email. I think Henry just fed her his usual crap about how beautiful she is and got her to pose nude for him. I hate to ask you, Olivia, but you have had the most communication with your mother. Would you call her and see if she will meet you so you can show this to her? I do not think she would see me or believe me. Obviously, this has to be before Friday night. If you meet her somewhere else, I will ask you to take your brothers with you. I'd be worried about your safety outside the house. Olivia said, I'll call her right now. Hi, Mom. We're all home for the holiday. Listen, Mom, I have a problem. No, I can't talk about it over the phone. I really need to see you. If you cannot come here, I can meet you somewhere. The boys also want to see you too, so they'll be with me. No, Saturday is no good. I really need to see you immediately. I can't talk to anyone else about this. I really need you, Mom. Tomorrow would be great. Of course, you can come here. That's up to you. I'll tell Daddy to leave if you don't want to see him. Oh, you do want to see him? Okay, I'll tell him. He will be here, and he will be nice. Don't worry. So what time tomorrow? Great. We will see you tomorrow around 11 a.m. Thanks, Mom. Bye. The kids were happy when we said goodnight. Nancy and I had a talk for a moment. I asked, are you upset over the email I showed tonight? Nancy said, I know it's crazy, but it reminded me of when I was assaulted. That's what's going to happen to Jessica. She started to cry. I hugged Nancy and said, with the kids' help, we're all going to try to keep that from happening. The kids were up and prepared for the showdown to save their mom. At 11 a.m., the doorbell rang. Olivia opened the door and said, Hi, Mom. Thanks for coming. Please come in and sit down in the kitchen. I have a big problem, Mom. It's your blindness. Henry sent out this email on Monday. Please read it. Jessica said, this isn't real. Who made this up? Olivia said, Mom, here are the pictures he sent with it. Jessica asked, where did you get these from? Olivia said, Mom, Henry sent them with the email. You know he took those of you. He's setting you up to get even with Daddy. He's a perv scumsucker who did this to 2 other women before you. On Friday night you are going to be the 3rd. He waits until the divorce is final and then ruins you by sending a video of your destruction to Daddy on Saturday. Daddy has a copy of the video Henry sent to Grace Ellis' husband, Mom. He's going to humiliate you. Jessica said, so John, you and I are now divorced. Are you saying you will take me back and remarry me? I decided to lie to save her life and said, Jessica, I would. We're trying to save your life. Jessica stood and said, no, you're not. You want to save your father. Cheat me out of marrying a billionaire. Nice try. Jessica ran to the door and left. The kids ran after her. We could hear the kids yelling at Mom's car. I could see the car driving away. They came back inside, clearly upset. I said, I am sorry, kids. I just told Nancy that I lied to your mom to try to save her. I was going to lock her in the house, but Henry knew she was here, and the driver would testify. I would go to jail, and Henry would do even worse to her. Olivia said, what's worse than what he's going to do? I said, tell her they're going somewhere romantic on his jet, drug her, and sell her to a Mexican house. There are worse things than that too. Olivia asked, when did you know she was lost? I answered. When I saw how she dressed for the charity event, I was worried. I thought about faking illness and not going, but Henry would have found a way. When I saw the way she was hanging on him at the event, I knew she had decided to trade up to a billionaire. I added, Olivia, I thought you were convincing her for a moment earlier, but she thinks she has a chance to be Mrs. Andrew. If on Friday they walk into a room and see many men ready to screw her, she will think if she does this, he will marry her. Olivia asked, What are we going to do? I replied, Well, when they dump her on the sidewalk on Saturday with her luggage, eventually, I think she will call you. When she does, ask her where she is, and I will pick her up and bring her to a clinic for STD testing. Then I'll put her in the motel near the highway so you can visit her after we get the STD test results, but not before. I started looking for a small house near here where she can live. I'll get her a small car, and I'll pay her basic overhead. I will not let her live in this house unless all 4 of you demand it. Olivia said, Thank you, Daddy. You're still paying her phone bill, aren't you? I said, Yes, I am. I didn't think Henry was going to get her a phone. So we had a very subdued Easter dinner on Thursday. In front of the kids and Nancy, I called my client who gave me the email invite Friday midday and told him that I did not mind that he was going on Friday night, but I warned him that if any harm comes to Jessica, I won't sue him, I will kill him. I told him to call me when it is over, no matter what time it is. We sat around watching TV on Friday night. We were all miserable. At midnight I got the phone call. He told me it was done. I thanked him and hung up. I told the kids, and Nancy and Olivia cried. Logan looked very upset. Noah got up and started pacing around the room. He was as mad as I'd ever seen him. I walked over to Noah, hugged him tightly, and said, I know, son, I know. He broke down and wailed. Everyone came over to hug Noah. Even the oldest child sometimes needs a hug. I suggested we all have 1 shot of scotch. Everybody had 2. It was late. I told Olivia to make sure her phone was fully charged. We all went to bed. I woke on Saturday and checked my work email for Henry's email and video. It was there waiting for me. I took a quick scan of the video, and Jessica went along with everything. When the kids got up, I told them I got the video, did a quick scan, and it was what we expected. I said I did not know what time he dumps the women, but I think we will hear before noon. At 11 a.m., Olivia's phone rang. It was Jessica. I told her to put it on speaker. Jessica said, You were right. You were right about everything. I was so stupid. I said, You're on speaker, Jessica. We're all here. Tell me where you are, and they'll come and get you. Jessica said, Mom, would you please come with John to get me? I am in front of the Marriott. I said, We're on our way. We didn't say much in the car. We drove up to the hotel, and Jessica was sitting on her luggage. I pulled the car up next to her and started loading the trunk. Nancy got out, opened the back door, and Jessica got in. I called the kids and told them we got her. Jessica said, Thank you for coming. I know you didn't have to. I am lucky I had the phone. You're still paying the bill, aren't you? I said, That's right. Jessica said, So whose room will I be in? I said, You're getting ahead of yourself. Our first stop is a clinic to have you tested for STDs. Jessica said, I don't have any diseases. I said, Oh, really? Did you get a health certificate from all the men who screwed you last night? I said, One of the men who was there called me last night and told me what happened. Still, if you don't believe that, I guess we can watch the video that Henry emailed me this morning. Jessica started crying and saying, I am sorry, I am sorry. I said, Well, that's a start. Remember to apologize to our children. After we go to the clinic, I am putting you up in the motel near the highway by the house. You cannot have contact with the children until you get a clean bill of health. After that, you have no money and have been out of the job market for 10 years, so either I support you, or you go down the drain. Jessica asked, So after I get a clean bill of health, I can come home? I said, I told everyone that I would buy you a small house near us and get you a small car. The only way I would allow you to live in the family home is if all 4 of them demand it. Jessica asked, So Mom, what do you think? Nancy said, Honestly, I would have been happy if you died last night. Maybe you still will. We all would be better off without you. However, I am learning from John. If the children demand it, I will go along. You know he told his client who was there last night that if any harm came to you, he would kill him. Jessica said. When I said share before, I meant that you get first dibs. I said I am glad I am not a part of this decision. I tell you what, Jessica, the day that I am a billionaire, then I'll screw you. Now shut up, you spoiled witch. We went to the clinic. The results would be mailed to Jessica at my home address. Then we set her up in the motel. The kids met us there to say hi and see how she looked. They kept their distance as I requested. Jessica said she hoped they would want her to live in the house. The kids brought her some food, and finally, we all left. When we went home, Noah was very upset. He said, I can't believe that scumsucker is getting away with this. I said, well, what he did is immoral, but none of it is illegal, so I can't go after him for that. Noah said, but you are going to get him, aren't you, Dad? I said, I have something in the works, but I cannot say anything until about the end of next week. I promise I will call all of you when I can. The kids went back to college on Sunday. They stopped to say goodbye to their mom. We got Jessica's STD results, and she had syphilis, chlamydia, and gonorrhea. I called my client and gave him the news. He had better be tested as well as anyone he has had sex with since Friday. When we showed Jessica the report, she was stunned, then she was mad. We took her to a doctor who prescribed all the required drugs, which I also had to pay for. There is no medical coverage for ex-wives. At the end of the week, I filed a class action against Henry personally, his corporation, and the law firm that certified the deal that started the whole mess with Jessica. I expected somewhere between $2 and $3 billion in damages. When the case is finalized, that could take 2 years, but I requested that the court seize all of his tangible assets. The law firm imploded immediately. Their assets were seized as well. I doubt any lawyer with that firm would ever be hired as an attorney again. When I called the kids on Friday and gave them all the news, they were not surprised about Mom's diseases, but they were thrilled about Henry. He is headed to the poorhouse. Noah asked me, how much of his money are you going to get? I told him it was too soon to tell, but I expected somewhere between $300 to $450 million for me personally, and the same amount for my law firm, to which I was going to end up as the new managing partner sometime next year. They still wanted to see Henry dead, but I told them that this hurt him much more. Both Peterson and Adams called me the next Monday to thank me for what I was doing to Henry. That only left one problem: where was Jessica going to live? We left that issue for Christmas vacation. When the kids came home, they told me that Jessica had been pressuring them to let her come back to the house. In the meantime, I had purchased a 1-bedroom bungalow near our house. I had also leased a Ford Focus for Jessica to drive. She asked for her old car, but I told her that it belonged to Nancy now. When the kids came home, I showed them the bungalow. They asked if they could show it to Jessica by themselves. I gave them the key, and the kids called us and said they were going to move Jessica into her new home. David's story is one of betrayal and redemption. What would you have done? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.